Hello there. Happy Thursday to you. I am delighted to be with you today and sharing with you the 8th of the 8-part series of my Stop Playing Safe series from the book Stop Playing Safe. And I have to share with you, it's kind of funny, but this book, can you see that is actually not square, that book? Can you see that? This book came out of the box in the funniest shape, and the pages, it actually cuts off some of the, where am I going there? You can actually see there, it's cut off some of the bottom of the paragraph. If you can see this, some of you may be listening to this on my Live Brave podcast later. But it's such a quirky mistake that was on the print run that it's now my favorite version of this book because it's a bit different. And chapter 8 of Stop Playing Safe is about backing yourself, making the biggest bet you can ever make, but the most important bet you can ever make, and that is making a bet on yourself. And that phrase is actually inspired by a quote that I came upon from Beyonce, who once said, "I'm not much one to gamble, but if I'm going to make a bet, I'll make a bet on myself." Now, I'm guessing that as you look back on your life, your career to date, you can think of times where you wished you had been braver. You wished you had spoken up. You wished you had taken a chance. You wished you had made a change or made a change sooner. And if you can, well, you're not alone. If it was easy to resist the gravitational pull of the status quo, a lot more people would. And far fewer capable, clever, creative people would choose to stick with what's known and what's familiar, even when it makes them miserable, and we'd have more people that would be pursuing what lights them up and living the highest, boldest vision for their lives and not settling and not selling themselves short. And so chapter 8 of Stop Playing Safe is where I really issue, I guess, a rally cry to you, to readers, to really take ownership of your own future. Your future is unwritten. You have no idea. It is largely a blank slate, but of course, 95% of the decisions that we make every day are done on autopilot. Only 5% of the things that we do are done consciously, intentionally, mindfully. And of course, we need to be on autopilot in order to operate. If you had to think hard about how to start your car, how to do everything, you would use up all your cognitive capacity on small things. But that default mode that you have, that default mode is often one driven by taking the course of least resistance, of greatest comfort, of lowest risk. And so often, unless we're being intentional and deliberate and mindful, we can so easily find ourselves just sliding onto that path of least resistance. And of course, the path of least resistance rarely takes us to an inspiring end point. It's more likely just to land you in a place you might never consciously have chosen. And so when it comes to living the lives that we're capable of living, when it comes to not settling for less than the biggest life we're capable of living, we have to be very conscious in constantly choosing the path of courage over comfort, the path of daring and doing over planning and, just kind of thinking about the options, procrastinating. And so as you look toward your future, I encourage you just to take a moment and ask yourself, am I moving toward an invented future that really inspires me? Am I moving toward goals and aspirations that align with a sense of purpose, that ignite a sense of passion, that help me be more and do more than I might otherwise do? Of course, living a brave life doesn't mean living an easy life, doesn't mean living a comfortable life. It sometimes means we have to roll up our sleeves and do difficult things. It means we have to embrace those uncomfortable, vulnerable emotions that our brains are hardwired for us not to experience. I mean, your brain is not wired to keep you happy. It's not wired for you to blaze brave trails. It's not wired for you to do difficult things and to risk rejection and risk failure and risk criticism. It's wired to protect you from all of those uncomfortable emotions. And it's why so many people often cower from doing what's right and speaking what's truthful and sharing what is really on their minds and their hearts, because they put themselves at risk of having to feel emotions. It's not the situation that they're afraid of. It's not the failure. It's how they think that failure is going to make them feel. And it's why embracing failure, it's why embracing rejection, it's why embracing sometimes disappointment can be liberating, because when you know that is all part and parcel of what it takes for you to succeed, it shifts your relationship to those experiences. I remember when I was writing my book, Brave, and I wanted to go out and get some endorsements for it. And, I'm not a super famous person, and, it's not like really famous people are going to go, sure, I'll endorse your book. And so I remember just thinking, Margie, I'm going to make it my goal to risk more rejection. I'm not wanting to be rejected, but I recognize that in the end, it's just mathematics. The more often you risk rejection or risk setbacks or risk failure on your way to an end point, then actually the faster you're going to land the outcomes you want. I mean, it's a basic premise of sales, right? You're not trying to miss out on a sale, but the more sales you risk missing out on, the more opportunities you will have to land the deal. And so, armed with a strong sense of purpose, I just decided I was going to risk at least 50 rejections on the way to landing some great endorsements. And I recall one time I was actually contacting someone I knew who knew Bear Grylls. And I admire Bear Grylls. I think he's an awesome human being, and he really embodies, one, the sense of purpose, but also obviously the passion and the courage that I write about. And I reached out to this friend and said, look, I know you're friends with Bear Grylls, and it's totally fine if you're not comfortable doing this, but would you consider asking him if he would endorse my book? And I sent that note off. I was in Australia at the time, and I sent it off in the afternoon. I woke up the next morning, and not only had he replied yes, but he had forwarded the manuscript to Bear Grylls, and Bear Grylls had already replied yes and said, here's your endorsement. All happened while I was sleeping. And it was kind of, could you plan that? No, there's plenty of times I've put myself out there and I haven't landed a result. I've had plenty of times I have had people say thank you, but no thank you. And I've had plenty of people not reply. But every worthwhile thing I've ever done, from having 4 kids to writing my first book and second, third, fourth, fifth, to getting up on stage to give a speech, everything worthwhile I've ever done has required risking the familiarity and the safety and security that I have now for the growth and the learning and the possibilities of contributing in really bigger, more meaningful ways that I want most. And so for you, where do you need to lay your own vulnerability on the line for the sake of a nobler cause? Where do you need to do something that is scary and uncomfortable? And I get it. Fear lives in our bodies. Fear lives in our tissues. Your shaky knees and your sweating palms and the racing heart and, the lump in your throat. But it is in overcoming that. It is in choosing to go, you know what? There's a part of me that's screaming at me, don't do it. But there's a bigger part of me that's saying, absolutely, I must. And more so, getting present to what does it cost you if you don't? What is the cost of you not doing the brave thing? What is the cost of playing it safe? And what we know is that the consequences of playing safe are not immediate, they are not obvious, and they're not dramatic. You don't know the doors that didn't open. You don't know what didn't happen because you didn't speak up and have that conversation, because you didn't put yourself out there. You can't know what benefits you didn't reap, what rewards you didn't get. But you shouldn't discount the hidden tax of cautiousness. We fail so much more from timidity than we ever do from over-daring. And so if you think about what does it take for you to be in a space where you're willing to be brave? Well, it takes conscious, deliberate, and daily strokes of effort, daily strokes of doing the very things, having the rituals, the practices that help you be on purpose, which was chapter 1 of Stop Playing Safe, to get on purpose, and then to continually really honor that sense of purpose and honor the bold vision that you create for yourself, and knowing that that's not always comfortable work. But comfort does not stay comfortable forever. Comfort does not stay comfortable forever. I'm repeating that because it's easy to tell yourself, oh, not now, it's not the right time, I haven't got the energy. But where are you going to land yourself if you don't do that thing that's uncomfortable? And, confidence, people often say, oh, I wished I had more confidence. Well, don't wait for confidence. If you're waiting for confidence, you may wait your entire life. You build confidence by doing the very things a confident person would, by putting your hand up, by asking for help, by making a bold request, by offering to do something that exposes you to not being good enough, smart enough, worthy enough, by honestly defying the voice of that imposter. It's going, oh, what will people will realize you don't know as much as you think, that you're not as good as they thought you were. Well, if you let that voice of fear, sometimes disguised as mild-mannered self-doubt, sit in the driver's seat, you will never come to realize that actually that voice is the imposter. And so ask yourself, what is it I need to do for myself on a daily basis that helps me bring my bravest self to this big, wild, wondrous game of life? What is it that you need to do so that your fears and doubts don't sit there in the driver's seat calling the shots? So as I finish up this series with Stop Playing Safe, and I of course, I'm going to give a plug to Stop Playing Safe because it's a book that I believe pretty much everyone would benefit from at this point, at this moment in time. And I really almost wholly rewrote it over the last 12, 18 months in the context of this pandemic, because I think that COVID-19 pandemic has only magnified our sensitivity to risk. It's only stoked anxiety, and it's only fueled our tendency to turn our forecasts into fearcasts and to hold back from taking the risks we have to take in our lives. Life is inherently risky, and you can try and, live your life inside the lines and shore up against all of the potential dangers. But at the end, there is no escaping our vulnerability. Ultimately, this pandemic has taught us that there is no certainty. It's an illusion. And you can live life as though, okay, I want to protect myself from all the bad things out there. Or you can just decide to embrace the words of Helen Keller, that life is ultimately a daring adventure or nothing at all. And that's not about throwing caution to the wind. It's not about being reckless. It is about really deciding that you want to create a life that inspires you, even if that sometimes means you have to do scary things, and to not play it too safe, and to really rise above that instinctive hardwiring in our own brains that makes us far more sensitive to potential losses than we are to potential gains. In fact, our brains are twice as sensitive to what could go wrong than on what might go right. And if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that the opportunities that are always born from times of disruption and times of change, from the creative destruction of this time, they don't go to the timid and to those who want to have all of their ducks lined up perfectly in a row. They go to those who are willing to try things, to experiment, to put themselves out there. You know, Jeff Bezos has said it many times. He makes decisions based on incomplete information, knowing full well that the decisions will not be perfect decisions. But he's at least moving forward, gaining ground, getting information, and from there he can iterate and adapt and go, all right, how can we do it better? How can we do it better? Because when you don't do that, when you play it safe, you miss out on all the feedback. You don't know what you don't know, as I said earlier. So I encourage you, if you do nothing else, and if you certainly don't buy my book, that's totally fine. I get it. You're busy. But I encourage you to ask yourself, where do you need to embrace discomfort and to take more risks? Where do you need to trade comfort for courage, self-doubt for self-trust, and to take a leap through your doubts toward a future that truly inspires you? I spoke to my beautiful dad last night. He is 86. And he said, you know, Margaret Mary, we're all just passing through. And it's easy to get caught up in the minutiae of life, in the daily things we have to focus on. We are short-term focused by nature. But where do you run the biggest risk of looking back one day on your one and only precious life and regretting that you weren't braver? Where do you currently, on your current path, put yourself at risk of the biggest risk of all, which is never getting to meet the person you could have been and never getting to know the mark you could have made, and going to your grave with the song still in you? And I know that may sound all very, overly profound, but it's true. We are all just passing through. And I just hope that as you think about your future and your life, just to really take ownership of your experience of it and to be that much more daring in what you do. First dare, then believe. Don't wait for courage. Courage begets courage. And one thing I know for sure is that your life will expand in proportion to your willingness to stop playing safe and to be braver. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, I want to just also mention my Live Brave Women's Weekend coming up next February. Go to livebraveweekend.com to learn more about that. I'm excited to be doing that after a 2-year break and to be supporting women in really stepping into their power and purpose and being that much braver in their lives too. All right. Thank you so much. I will see you again soon.